It's day 9, July 4th. We just crossed the border. We're on Highway 2 traveling east. And just give you some quick facts about agriculture in Minnesota. Minnesota's growing degree days vary from 100 days in the north to 150 in the south. Precipitation is 30 inches in the southeast to less than 20 inches in the northwest. On an annual basis. Minnesota is ranked number 3 in soybean production, 4 in corn production, ranked 7 in wheat production. Average size of farm is 322 acres. In the latest USDA crop progress report, Minnesota reminds me of Nebraska. It's looking good. We'll keep you posted as we go along on our tour. There probably are some problem spots, but we'll check them out. Corn in the very poor to poor was only 1% over the last 3 weeks. Good to excellent has increased 4 percentage points to 81 in the last 3 weeks. Soy is very poor to poor, 1%. Good to excellent, up 3% to 77. Wheat, this is spring wheat. We're at 2% very poor to poor and good to excellent at 84, up 11%. So this is a soybean field we're in front of here. Overall, the crops here thus far look pretty good. We're traveling east on highway number 2. We just passed Fosston, Minnesota. We're in front of a cornfield. So far, as we've traveled east, crops in Minnesota look quite good. This cornfield here is about just above knee high. As we've traveled further east, I'm starting to see some issues with moisture once again, particularly with the beans, not so much with the corn, and the wheat looks really good here in Minnesota. We're traveling south on Highway 63. We're near Zubro Falls, Minnesota. And we're standing in front of a cornfield, and as we've traveled from the north, went northeast, then south, there's a lot of corn in the north that was irrigated. It looked decent, lush and green. I'm not seeing any issues here in Minnesota. It's about chest high by July 4th, and there's some heat here today. So corn's looking good in Minnesota. We're traveling south. We're on Highway 63. We're going towards Rochester, Minnesota. We're standing in front of a wheat field. It looks like this field was just sprayed, and there seems to be some weed pressure. But overall, through Minnesota, what we've seen thus far, I'm not seeing the standing water, the moisture issue that we've been accustomed to thus far on the tour. We're traveling west in Minnesota. We're on Highway 14, and we're past Walnut Grove. We passed Nicholton, and there's about a stretch of about 50 miles where, if you see in the background here, there's a little yellow tinge. Low-lying areas, there's a lot of beans that are yellow, probably due to too much moisture. It's a nice sunny day today. We're getting some heat. It's 32 degrees Celsius, but there's field after field after field. It's not so much the corn. Corn seems to be doing quite well. These are ankle-high soybeans. They're looking good, but there's some problem areas in this neck of the woods. This is big corn soybean production here in Minnesota. Probably not as many problem areas as we saw in the east, but nonetheless there are some areas here. The southern Nebraska was similar to this area, although this was a little bit more than that southern Nebraska. So nonetheless, overall the crop looks green and lush. The corn's looking a little bit better. We're traveling west on Highway 14. We're just past Tyler, Minnesota. We're in front of a nice looking wheat field here. Looks like a little bit of wind damage. This area seems to have had a little bit more moisture through the month of June. Some local farmers suggesting right around that first week of June we got as much as 8 inches of rain. But overall, nice looking head here, and not too many issues as we travel further west into Minnesota. We're traveling west on Highway 14. We're almost to the far end, as far as we can go in Minnesota, on the west side, and we passed Lake Benton. You know, this is typical of Minnesota. It's either, you know, waist to chest high. I did see corn that was much higher than this. This is probably 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks away from tasseling. But if I was to compare this to this, Minnesota looks like Nebraska to us, although Nebraska was a little bit ahead of schedule, at least 1 to 2 weeks. And we had a little bit more issues with soybeans, some moisture, some yellowness in the beans here in the southern part of Minnesota. We traveled from Grand Forks, number 4 east, came down through 52. There's a lot of potato that's grown in the north, some irrigation up there as well. Most of the corn bean production is in this very central to southern Minnesota. Overall, it looks good, but again, I'm going to rank Minnesota as number 2 out of the 12 states so far. Well, we've done 9 so far, the total of 12, so rank 2. And is it above average crop? Again, too many issues. I'm seeing too many issues with the beans, although we did see some of our best beans in Minnesota. I'm going to think about an average crop here in Minnesota. It's not quite what it was last year. And corn, again, I'm going to suggest it's an average crop. There is some corn that's probably above average, but not enough to make a huge difference. So an overall average crop for Minnesota. Minnesota is one of the top 5 states. That can be a make or break situation. I'm not sure Minnesota this year is going to help the national average, so there's no record corn or bean production coming down the pipeline thus far.